Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, just discovering that my wife had an ongoing affair for months, despite claiming to have ended it, has left me devastated. Initially, she confessed to emotional detachment and a one-time meeting with the other man. We sought therapy and seemingly reconciled, but she later admitted to continued liaisons, including intimate encounters. She cited fear of the man's threats as a reason for the secrecy. Despite forgiving her once, ongoing deceit and the revelation of a physical affair have shattered my trust. The situation is complicated, and I'm unsure if our relationship can be salvaged. Now let's get into the story. Yesterday, I just found out that my wife has slept with another man on multiple occasions. She has been seeing him for several months, if not most of this year. Toward the end of last year, we had been having a bit of a rough time, and she claimed that she had emotionally checked out. It was at this time that she began talking to this man. She stated that they had met up once and just talked. She said that it was at this time that she decided that she was making a mistake and chose to break things off. She had actually confessed to this in March, and we both began seeing therapists to try and work things out. In my opinion, and per her own statement, things were going well and we had been spending a lot of time together in the last few months with barely any arguments. She stopped seeing her therapist, and so did I after we spent a week-long vacation together. That went great. Yesterday, I found out that this was not quite the truth. She admitted that she had still been seeing him, and that they met up again in the early part of the year at a hotel and had intimate. She stated that this was not the only time, and it had happened at least 2 other instances while they had spent time together. She spent time with him on multiple occasions while claiming to me to be spending time with her female friend. She claimed she did not sleep with him during every meeting. Here's where things get messy. She claimed she had been trying to break things off for a long time, but he was holding the over her with the unspoken threat of telling me everything. She stated that once we began working things out and after she originally confessed was when she tried to break things off. She claimed to have been scared to tell me the full truth because she didn't want to lose me and is still in love with me. She said she thought he was crazy and might show up in her house if she refused to see him. She most recently saw him a week ago, and she denied sleeping with him. She stated she did not want to go see him, and that she cried, begging him not to make her. All this is extra confusing. On top of everything else, I forgave her after the original confession because she said nothing physical happened and she had cut off all communication with him months ago. That was a lie. She had recently been giving me treats and gifts as well as framing recent pictures of us around the house. This made me think things were going well. We share a home and several cats together, and I love them like my own children. I have loved her unlike anything else in this world and would have done anything for her. I hate the idea of losing any of the life we had together, but can I ever trust her? Can this ever be fixed? Should I even try? Update for clarification. The AP was married. His betrayed spouse caught him and informed me. After confronting my spouse, she confessed there was no proof of a physical affair, but she admitted to it. Then I've finally been able to eat again, and I have spoken to a good friend who has my back for support. Today's second story. In this story, Opie grew up on a horse farm in rural Ohio, experiencing a challenging childhood marked by divorced parents and abusive relationships. They entered a long-term relationship with someone they met in their mid-teens, enduring years of emotional and physical abuse, as well as infidelity. He struggled with self-worth and stayed in the toxic relationship, even after discovering multiple instances of cheating. Eventually, they reached a breaking point, initiated divorce proceedings, and found a healthier, more fulfilling relationship. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of recognizing and leaving toxic relationships. Now let's get into the story. I grew up on a 26-acre horse farm out in rural Ohio. Growing up, I was a loner and preferred reading books to talking to people. My parents had gotten divorced when I was young. I lived with my mom and saw dad every other weekend. This did have an effect on me growing up, mainly because I had a hard time knowing what a healthy relationship looked like and didn't really have time with my dad to have a healthy male role model. My mom had a series of boyfriends, some of which were physically abusive to my brother and me. I remember getting backhanded across a room at 10 by one of them or belted anytime anything at all was out of order. Another one used glue traps for the mice in the garage and made us watch when he cut them off the traps, which he'd do by cutting all their legs off before throwing the still-living legless mouse in the trash can. A real gem, that one. I learned very quickly to just keep my mouth shut and act generally pleasant because anything else might get me punished, usually hit. This also made me develop an unhealthy attitude of just grin and bear it, don't have issues, and if people were bad to me, I'd just take it whenever I could. I would recess into myself and my books. I was a voracious reader and had over 1,000 books on 5 double-stacked bookshelves in my bedroom. I'd hide in there in the winter once all the chores were done. Anytime the weather was good enough, I'd be outside reading in the forest or out in the hay field, and I spent a lot of time over in the old cemetery across our field. It was beautiful, but looking back, probably not the most healthy lifestyle. Sorry for the backstory dump, but through some therapy, I've come to realize that my upbringing put me in a vulnerable spot for staying with an abusive partner. My hackups and coping mechanisms just led me to tolerate a lot of intolerable behavior from people and I met when we were in our mid-teens at a church lock-in that neither one of us wanted to be out of all things and hit it off right off the bat. She was one of those mid-2000s quirky girls writing weird poetry, yelling, spork, all the standard stuff at the time. And she was decently attractive with curly hair. She came up and challenged me to an air hockey game, and you know how the rest of that story goes. We dated pretty much exclusively for the next 7 years. We finished high school together, went to the same college, and even got the same scholarship to attend the same local state college. We had our ups and downs, but I put that down as just how relationships must be. She was erratic at the best of times and tried isolating me from the few friends I had because they were jealous of her taking all my time. She'd cry over the smallest stuff, hit me when she was mad over things I had nothing to do with, and just generally pester me to shower her with love. She needed constant validation from everyone around her and wasn't too shy about trying to get it. I put up with all this because she was my first real girlfriend, and she was great at just minimizing her bad behavior into something I was just too dumb to get. I just think she was being irrational, but would put up with it to get back to our normal lives. College was where the more obvious red flags started coming. Within a few months of her coming to college, she was constantly hanging around with other dudes in our dorm, honors dorm. There were all male and all female suites that shared a building. I would ask if we were still good and get positive answers, but then find her sitting on some guy's lap in his room later that same night. Multiple times I caught her making out with randoms and just generally behaving inappropriately with guys. After I told her everything I'd seen and threatened to break up with her if she didn't tell me the truth. It came out that she'd given one other guy oral, which she described in excruciating detail. Him. She said she was obsessed with him because, no lie, he looks like the guy from Napoleon Dynamic and is just really hot. Yes, I should have ended everything we had right there for that comment alone, but we've been together for nearly 5 years at that point, so I thought we could fix things and reconcile. I confronted the guy, she cut off contact, and things got better for a bit. I ended up getting a decent job with a local construction company during my junior year of college and saved up enough in 6 months to make a down payment on a house. This was in 2008 in an older steel town, so housing values were pretty much at rock bottom. I talked it over with Elle, and we decided to buy a house fairly close to our school and just start our life together while we finished up college. We also got engaged shortly after moving in. I thought that by removing her from the co-ed dorm, I'd fix her cheating issues, and it really did seem to work for a bit. All in all, it seemed like life was looking up. There were some good years for a while. She got a job selling books, then went on for a graduate degree. Actually, she tried for 4 different graduate degrees, but kept quitting because they weren't what she wanted to do. I paid for the one she couldn't get a scholarship or student loans for, and just generally supported her and her decisions. We got a dog and some cats. I kept working at that same construction job for a boss I hated, but it paid the bills. We got married in 2010 when we were 23. Kids don't get married young. You don't know what a good relationship is yet. I want to get across here that it was exactly what I thought a good life was. I'd get up early, give her a kiss, and head to work, where I'd occasionally get reprimanded for not reading my boss's mind. I'd do drafting and job takeoffs or go to a job site and wear myself out doing whatever work they needed since it was a small business and everyone wore a lot of hats. Then I'd come home, let the dog out, and listen to Elle talk about her day. If I complained about my day, I wasn't being manly enough and was just adding to her stress. So I'd just start making dinner or mowing the lawn, whatever. Rinse and repeat. I thought this was completely normal and maybe even better than average. The wheels really started to come off, though I didn't know it for a while. When I got a new job with a local energy company doing the mapping, she was finally making more than minimum wage and was only there for a few months before her boss's boss took notice of her. I don't think it was 4 months before suddenly she got a job as a process assistant in a large nearby city, which was a 2-hour drive for her. I'm not sure of the details, but within those same few months, she started an emotional and eventual physical affair with her new boss. I still don't know what to think of this, since the guy was 30 years older than her, was recently separated from his wife, and was literally living in his mom's basement. I noticed she was withdrawing more than usual from the relationship, but figured it was the stress from a big corporate job and the drive. I tried putting in more effort and surprising her with gifts and stuff, but nothing really landed. Again, I just figured she'd used to the work and things would go back to normal. In January 2013, we moved to Cleveland to be closer to her work. I found a new and much better job. We got a really nice place for less than the market price, and everything was shiny again. Sure, she had to work really late quite often, but you know, that's corporate. She'd gotten a pay raise for her excellent work. Elle was making new work friends and was finally coming out of her shell a bit. Elle also started going out with work friends a lot and quickly started staying out very late and coming home drunk as a skunk, which led to more than a few fights between us. Things deteriorated, and again we just settled into a new equilibrium where we talked less to each other, and when we talk, it would be the most milquetoast of topics. In December 2014, we went down to see her parents in Texas and had a great trip. It really seemed to rekindle some of those feelings we've been missing, and it really made me realize that things were more messed up in our relationship than I thought. When we got back, I had a real moment with Elle where I told her that I really had a great time and want to keep being as invested in each other as we were on the trip. I felt like I had a kind of epiphany where I knew we could change our relationship for the better, and I was inviting her to help me with it. She screamed straight up, looked at me with panicked eyes, stuttered, screamed, and ran away down to the basement. I followed, trying to figure out just what I had said that would have led to that reaction, which led to her accusing me of cornering her in the basement. I backed off and she, through tears, told me that she didn't deserve love. I tried to ask her what this was about, got nothing from her, and we finally just went into separate rooms to calm down. The next day, I tried to bring it up, and she told me in no uncertain terms that none of that happened, and if I brought it up again, she would leave. Straight up denied that she freaked out that we had even seen each other the day before. I obviously got really suspicious that something was up after that point, but I didn't really think it was cheating more, just that she was being insecure. She'd always been very insecure in general, just never to a level that made her freak out like that. After that episode, I decided that my teenage self was correct, that having a roommate who was occasionally funny and sometimes slept with me was about as good a relationship as I would ever get. I had a prejudice against divorce after seeing how my mom's life had turned out afterward, so I decided I'd just make this work however I could. The staying out, drinking, and random outbursts kept going at her end, and I decided to just never bring up my feelings unless she asked directly. Meanwhile, I decided to work on myself first to be a better, more interesting partner. I started building up my home gym, working out, and got into backpacking and woodworking. things that I always kind of liked but never had time for. Elle had complained that I had no hobbies and wasn't interesting enough for her around this time, so I took her at her word that this would help more than actually talking about our issues. This is one of the few good things that came out of the relationship, as I'm still pretty physically fit and look much better than ever before in my life. Plus, my woodworking and turning have turned into a lot of useful life skills. D-Day was in April 2015. She came home from a night out with friends insanely drunk. I'm still not sure how she made it home. She threw up multiple times while I held her hair, then passed out on the floor by the toilet. She was so drunk she would breathe in these odd gasps, and I thought she was just going to stop breathing. At one point, I thought about calling an ambulance, but just decided to wait it out a bit. She had her phone beside her on the floor, and it kept getting texts, which I ignored for a while. Finally thought it was probably someone checking to see if she got home okay, so I decided to open it with her thumbprint and respond. The texts were all from her boss, and the last one was something along the lines of "We can't do this in the office anymore or we will get caught." I immediately understood what was happening and felt like the stupidest dude ever that I didn't put it together at any point in the last 2 to 3 years. I still feel dumb about it. We were young, but that's no excuse to be so naive and checked out about your marriage. I had always just assumed we had grown distant, but I had never once thought of cheating on her and just assumed she felt the same way. I started going through all her texts with him and saw that this had been going on for a while, though it was unclear when it went from being an EA instead of a good working relationship, and then again on when the physical stuff started. I did find a message from earlier that same night between pictures down her shirt from the bar where they were talking about the next time they'd meet up just a week or so away. I decided that if I told her anything at that point, she was going to flip it around into me snooping and misreading or misremembering what I read. Since I have a terrible memory, guessing now that was just her gaslighting me to cover up her own indiscretions instead of confronting her. I went out and bought a voice recorder and spent a few days placing it in her car before work to find a well-hidden spot and test how long it could record for. I also scoped out where they were planning on meeting up so I could find it the day before the meetup. She had told me she needed to go to a separate nearby town for work and that she'd be late coming home. I told her it was fine and to take her time coming home. Inside I was nervous, but apparently held it together enough to keep her from being suspicious. The hours passed. Then around 6 p.m., I headed out and drove to a spot near the bar they were meeting at, and wham! There they were. Both were in her car, pawing each other and making out. I just drove away, went home, had some shots and cried. She came home later that night, and I didn't say anything about it, just made us some dinner. She was all bubbly about how well her meeting had gone and thanked me for being understanding. After she went to bed, I went out and got the voice recorder and listened through it, and heard her begging to go back to their office to do the deed, amongst other things. I couldn't even figure out how to react. She was never like this at home and sounded nearly deranged in how much she wanted to be with him. I listened through this all, then went in and woke her up and told her we needed to talk. I asked if she was cheating and she denied it. I asked her about the name of the bar she was at and she denied even knowing what it is. I told her I was there earlier today and saw some interesting things, and she immediately asked if I had followed her. How could I, and is there a tracker in my car? You have to tell me. I'm going to have a panic attack. You can't just track me again. Insane. I told her I had read her text from a few weeks ago and went to the bar where she said she was meeting S, her boss. This turned into opening her phone to show me no such text existed anymore, which I think she thought would negate the fact I went there and saw them. So crazy thinking about it. Finally, she says that yes, she had been seeing S. They've been together a few times, and finally, if I made her stop seeing him, she wouldn't love me anymore. Somehow this worked on me. I had no self-confidence, didn't like divorce as an institution, and figured being with someone to split the bills was better than being alone. And for a few months that was it. She'd have meetups with him. I would try to talk her out of it. There were crazy moments. S had other girlfriends and L knew about them and got jealous of them. One time she came home sobbing and I hugged her while she told me that she thought was breaking up with her for someone else. I just went still inside, felt anything other than a kind of ironic humor in it, like an eye-rolling feeling. Still don't know why I stuck around after that. And of course, they kept seeing each other. Around this point, she also started having one-night stands with random other guys. I found out about a few of them over the years and suspect a few more. Finally, I drove myself into having a panic disorder and decided enough was enough. I gave her the voice recorder and demanded that she break it off with S and record herself while she was telling him or I was out. She cried, but finally relented the next day. She did what I asked. When S found out I knew, he immediately panicked, and I got to watch those texts come in on L's new Apple Watch that she didn't realize didn't. Texts that you removed from your phone. Things settled a bit, and we went to marriage counseling for a session. I agreed to not tell the counselor about her infidelity this session as the condition for L to even go. The counselor then spent the whole session telling me I was smothering L by wanting to go through her phone and know where she was, which I only started doing after the cheating. We never went back. That was from 2015 to 2016. After that, we stayed together, and about twice a year I'd find some new infidelity. Once she was drunk and did oral on a guy she worked with in the bathroom. Once, on a work trip out of state, she started texting a guy and started the weirdest EA I've ever heard of. A decent chunk of his text was about how his grandmother had to wipe his butt until he was in his mid-teens, and he liked it the whole time. I just got used to pain shopping. It almost became a game for us where she'd find out how I found out, would swear to stop seeing Slash, talking to Slash, ruining so, and so while also disconnecting her Apple Watch or not using her car, etc. Looking back, I just kind of got used to it. I checked out of the relationship in any real sense. Funny enough, we'd have fights about me not being invested in the relationship during this time too. I finally had enough when I got a message out of the blue from one of her co-workers' wives and she caught her husband and L texting and snapping. She sent screenshots of them to me and said that she wanted me to know. The screenshots really drove home to me that L wasn't just prone to, or was making mistakes over and over. I know it's dumb, but when you're in a relationship, if you excuse one thing, it gets easier the next time. And I had gotten to the point of excusing everything. We'd have our ritual fight over it, she'd end the affair, and the cycle would begin again in a few months. In the screenshots from N, Elle was saying things like, "I should have done you the first time I saw you," setting up meetings and etc. I confronted Elle with the texts, and her first reaction was annoyance that the guy didn't hide it from his wife better. It blew my mind. And when I was talking with N, it was obvious she was crushed. They had 2 kids, and her husband's actions were likely going to tear the family apart. And there was my loving wife, mad that he was too dumb to hide it properly, and she knew he couldn't handle this sort of relationship and sent me some texts later on, after the affair was in the open of L, telling the guy that there was basically a code of conduct for cheaters and this guy didn't follow the rules. I snapped out of it like I finally felt awake after 6 years of affairs and 10 years before that, of just general abuse and incoherence. I moved into the finished half of the basement, slept on an air mattress by my gym, and started drawing up dissolution papers. I figured if the dissolution failed, I could always hire an attorney and get a divorce. I ghosted Elle as hard as I could, being in the same home. 100% gray rock. Elle started love-bombing me in her own weird way. One time I got home from work and she bought a lamp for the basement and put it by my air mattress. Probably the sweetest thing she'd ever done for me to drive home everything. A few days later, she was working from home in the afternoon and didn't hear me go into the kitchen for a drink. I could hear she was on speakerphone on the couch, and it was S still her boss and the guy all of this started with. I heard him ask if she was alone, and she said yes. I thought, really? Really right now as I'm prepping the dissolution in the same house. She's going to indulge this guy. I crept closer and listened in. He started talking about how he had never done it in a car in an automated car wash and thought that would be fun. I just walked in, got behind her head on the couch and yelled, "His nice hearing from you." Elle jumped and nearly fell off the couch. Just immediate hung up and I laughed and went to put on my shoes. Elle yelled out, "That was rude." I laughed again and got my coat. Elle asked where I was going and I set out. I must have said it in a way where she finally got it that we were done. We had been done, and now I was just wrapping it up. She ran up and blocked the door. I told her to move, and she got this weird little smile on her face. I still remember it like all this was still a game. That if she blocked the door, then I'd just have to stay, and we would still be married. That her plan to keep me by physically blocking the door had no chance of failing, and I was just stuck now. I grabbed her by her shoulders and picked her up and moved her just feet off the floor right over to the side of the door, then gently back down on her feet. Told her if she tried to keep me there, I would take her apart because I didn't have it in me anymore to deal with her, and all the anger I'd been pushing down my whole life was still all right there. I had never touched her violently and still never have, but that was the closest I got. I drove off to one of my favorite local bars and hung out with friends I'd been making for the last few years. I texted Elle that I knew she had another work trip coming up that next week, and that when she got back, she wouldn't be welcome back in the house. Lucky me. She never came back. Moved in with a guy. She'd been seen down there, and they both lived in his brother's dining room. Since the guy was unemployed and living with his brother, I only saw her a few times after that. She signed the paperwork I sent her with next to no changes. I used the threat that her company would fire both her and her boss if I told them of the relationship they carried on if she tried to be difficult, which got me the house, my car, and less than half of the over $20,000 in credit card that I didn't know she had racked up. Also, none of my retirement accounts got touched, which is a blessing. She came back to Ohio to sign the paperwork in December 2019 and brought her new guy, which was about as awkward as you'd expect. The new guy seemed to think that I was at fault for the divorce for being abusive, and he was there in case I got violent again. I had never hurt her, and that includes when she'd get violent with me. I just pin her arms and wait for her to stop trying to hit me. I never told him that she cheated on me, because I'm pretty sure he was one of the guys she did it with, so I'm thinking he already knew. The other time was when she came back for her stuff that was still in the house while I watched her pack up. A few months had passed. She told me she got a new apartment and that new guy had moved in without asking. She found out when he was helping her move and sat the urn with his dead dad in it on her table. She gave me a weird help me look, and I just laughed. After that, I didn't see her again. Within a week of the divorce, I got cold approached by a girl at a concert and got her number, then again at a local event. Within a month, I was actively dating 4 people, all of which were better than Elle in every way. My friend said that I had that fresh on the market vibe law. I was just happy for the first time in a very long time, and it made it easy to attract people. I calmed down a bit on the dating though. Did have a few girlfriends, doubled down on my workout routine, went to Peru and hiked the Cordillera Blanca mountains, and almost got stuck there when COVID-19 hit. Got into my ancestry after a 23andMe test and found a weird little utopian commune that was founded by a guy with my last name. Though it's mostly historical buildings now. Elle tried to stay in contact over the last few years, sometimes for actually important things. Mostly bull, just trying to keep me in her life. Somehow I've ignored it, though. I've got some funny insights, like how the new guy immediately started fake proposing multiple times a week and it was freaking her out. She texted me once saying that taxes sucked as a single, so she was getting married for tax reasons. When she found out I had found someone and got me engaged, she sent a congratulations card to the house that she had hand-painted herself, which immediately went in the trash. Or the fact that the new guy was recently diagnosed with Ms. I don't see Elle sticking around and suddenly finding her caring side to take care of a dude 10 years her senior with a neurological issue. In August 2020, I encountered my current wife. See, she's amazing. Had gotten out of a bad marriage with a guy who seems a mirror image of Elle. We hit it off when I was talking with a buddy of mine and I said, I'm just looking for someone normal. She heard me and we both looked at each other for a second with a funny me too look. We got married after 2 years of dating this last September, and we've never even fought once in the last year. She takes care of me, I take care of her. We talk every day and it's always beautiful. It's really tough to describe, but she's the one. I'm doing much better now. I look back on all that on literally half of my life and wonder why I stayed for so long and through so much. especially when it was so easy to find someone so perfect afterward. If any of you made it this far and are currently in a bad relationship and wondering what to do, I get it. I think most of us get it. You put up with stuff that you think you never would. You think that this person you've put so much effort into can't be doing this on purpose. You'll excuse next to anything. You actively make yourself into a doormat. It's not worth it. Just get out. Because whatever led to cheating once, it'll happen again and again after that. Cheaters will tell themselves whatever they need to in order to not feel bad about themselves and their actions. They will always justify it to themselves and to you. And you'll always wonder what they're doing when they're not with you. You deserve better. So leave, cut losses, and do whatever you need to. My hang-up on divorce and low self-confidence kept me in way longer than I ever should have. And nothing that happened in the relationship in the years after I found out helped me in any way. The only person that can get you into a better headspace is yourself. And focusing on you and the people that actually care about you. It gets better once you leave.